Hey webheads, welcome to another channel video, and if you are interested in supporting me in my cosplay endeavors, there is my Amazon wishlist and my Ko-Fi, which both will be in the links in the description. So if you guys want to go check that out and help me out, that would be very appreciated. You don't have to, but it's there. Alright, enjoy the video. Peace. This video is not going to go the way you think it is. Is there such a thing as too much? It's currently 10 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I've spent the last 2 hours looking over every leaked and rumored detail of the upcoming Spider-Man 3 starring Tom Holland. And for the first time ever, I'm not excited for a Spider-Man related project. How sad is that? I have loved the character of Spider-Man and Peter Parker and the stories he's told through games, books, shows, and movies for about as long as I've been alive. But with the mixed reception of the MCU's version of his character, it's always been a mixed bag for me. Homecoming and Far From Home are enjoyable, but their flaws don't go unnoticed. Plenty of other people have talked about how Homecoming is a good movie but a bad Spider-Man movie, the fundamental flaws of Far From Home, and why having Spider-Man be a super obsessed fan is a problem. Those videos are great, I'll leave them in the description. But really thinking about it, it seems clear that the MCU is too scared to let this version of Peter B. Parker really grow as a character, and they're worried of telling a more grounded and super serious story without connecting it to the greater Marvel universe they've built over the last 12 years. Over the past few months, as the movie has finally started filming, multiple rumors, casting, and other crazy stuff has been leaked and revealed. But honestly, it doesn't make me hyped for it. It makes me worried about it. So what I'm gonna do in no particular order is I'm just gonna talk about how I feel about this stuff, and that's all it's gonna be. Starting with the return of Jamie Foxx as Electro. It's safe to say I wasn't the only one who was shocked, no pun intended, when it was revealed that Jamie Foxx would be reprising his role as Electro. Even though he's stated I won't be blue this time, or he's kinda gone back on those statements, it's still the last thing any of us would have thought. I mean, out of all the old Spider-Man villains you could have had return in a new form, you go with one of the most controversial ones outside of Harry Osborn as the Green Goblin or the Rhino. So basically every villain in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And it's even been rumored that Alfred Molina will come back as Doc Ock in some form. And it's also been confirmed that Scorpion and Kraven may also be villains in the movie. So, it's already kind of messing up with the same problem as The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3, where both of these films have too many villains, so they end up being underwhelming at best and god-awful at worst. Having so many villains means you have to devote screen time, backstory, and reason for why they are the way that they are, and why they want to take on Spider-Man. It's clear that Sony and Marvel Studios really want to create this Sinister Six as soon as possible. Hell, Sony's been trying to do it ever since the Amazing Spider-Man series. But I feel like they're just doing it to get it over with. And again, that is cool, but I feel like it's just too soon for this version of Pete, you know? Like, he's only fought 2 villains so far, Vulture and Mysterio. And it's easier to enjoy those villains because there's plenty of time to discover their backstory and motivation to be the way that they are. If you have 6 villains in one movie, and this is the first time over half of them have been introduced, you either have to make them like Slipknot or Katana from Suicide Squad, where they get only one line of exposition explaining their thing, or you try to give them all an emotional tie to Spider-Man that just feels weird and out of place. Again, we have Vulture and Mysterio is dead. So that's actually like 5 villains at the most that you need to introduce and explain. I understand that Kevin Feige has said this will be like a survival movie, and that's cool. It's just that having so many bad guys in your movie without explaining it just takes away from the hero. But speaking of Kraven, the Kraven the Hunter rumors. Sergei Kravenov, born from Mother Russia by way of Mother Africa. Or so he was. Until now. The rumors of what Kraven's gonna be like has been all over the place. Some say he's from Wakanda and he was on the side of Killmonger. Others say he was affected by Sokovia. Some think he's related to Whiplash to keep up with the stupid theme of Spider-Man having to clean up Iron Man's mistakes and yet still worship him as a god. But the most recent and the worst one is that Kraven is traveling across dimensions and hunting alternate versions of Spider-Man. First off, that's not Kraven the Hunter. That's Morlun the Immortal. For those of you who don't read the comics, which is fine, Morlun is part of this family called the Inheritors, and they travel across the multiverse hunting spider people to absorb their energy because of some spider totem mumbo jumbo. It's very confusing. But by making Kraven into Morlun, you completely waste the opportunity to use both these characters later because they would have the same backstory and character motivation. And if they are really pushing for a live-action Spider-Verse, more on that later, you will have to create an entirely different threat for them to face, which relies on Spider-Man not calling the Avengers for help or, just him being lazy. In an older video I made that I took down because I didn't really like it as much, it was basically around the time where Spider-Man's film rights were on the ropes. I had Kraven go after Spider-Man for a bounty that was placed on his head so he could pay for his wife's treatment. I'm not saying mine is better, but when you have a grounded villain who's got a soft spot, the audience grows more attached to them and we want to see them more. That's why villains like Loki, Killmonger, and Thanos work. They have realistic goals you can understand and sympathize with. By keeping Kraven as a simple man trying to do right by his wife, or for just the thrill of a hunt like the character is supposed to be, you don't ruin the character by making him someone else you can use later that makes more sense. Now that we've covered the villains, let's talk about the confirmed and rumored allies Peter may or may not have by his side in this movie. Starting with the return of Doctor Strange as Peter's new mentor. Words cannot begin to describe how much this annoys me. It's hard for me to find a place to even start, so let's go for some simple stuff. This not only hurts Peter's development into his own superhero, but regresses him over the course of his entire involvement in the MCU. This version of Spider-Man in his first movie learns that he doesn't need a high-tech supersuit or the title of Avenger to be a hero. He just needs to be himself and look out for the little guy. And in Far From Home, Peter learns that he doesn't need to be the next Iron Man, he just needs to be the first and only Spider-Man. Meaning he doesn't need any other superhero to hold his hand like a lost child, and he needs to do things his own way. But with Doctor Strange, that's completely gone and Peter is pretty much back to square one. So those last movies of development would pretty much go out the window. I mean, what I'm hoping for is that it's be like learning that he doesn't need to rely on his mentor for help, learning that he doesn't have to replace him, and then fully realizing he doesn't need another mentor. What I would like to see is a scene where Doctor Strange is like, hey, let me show you some stuff, or trying to insinuate that he's the mentor. But Peter just tells him, no, I don't want any more Avengers help. Have him tell me what to do. I need to do things by myself. My last two villains, they were because of Tony. I had to clean up his mess, and I'm tired of that. Secondly, out of all the current characters you could have picked, why Doctor Strangelove? I understand he went to help Peter in the comics during the events of One More Day, but that was so he could save Aunt May, who was hurt because of him being Spider-Man. And if you want to go down the mentorship route, you choose the character who is the furthest away from the little guys. Doctor Strange is a character who fights demons and multiversal beings. Doctor Strange isn't the character who would help a kid's cat out of the tree. I mean, there might be some cool lessons he could teach him, Like maybe teach him magic, that's cool for an Elseworld story, but not for a mainline story. Is it going to teach him the same thing he learned in his movie, that it's okay to lose and it's not a one-man crusade to let other people help you? That's wholesome, because it would make sense that Peter wouldn't really be trusting of people. But you know who would make more sense to teach Peter that? You don't know? I'll give you a hint. This person is a lawyer, which would actually help Peter since he's been accused of mass murder and framed. And previously, this person has learned not to push their friends away, and it's not them against this world, one person crusade against evil. Also, learning that they should use the teachings of their father and not the one who taught them how to kick butt. And they have some similar powers that would help Peter learn how to trust his spider sense. I'm calling it spider sense, nothing else. Still lost? This person is Daredevil. Now, recently Marvel has acquired the film rights back to the character. You know what they should do? Use him in this movie. That's actually probably why they delayed the filming, not just because of you know what. In season 3 of the show, Matt learned that he's better than the bad guy, and he should honor the lessons Father Lucas and his actual father have taught him. He shouldn't be a cold-blooded killer who shuts out his loved ones during hard times like Stick or Bullseye. Just like how Peter should keep fighting for those who can't help themselves to honor Uncle Ben. And not be like Tony and try to understand his enemies with his compassion, like Tobey did with Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2, and he tried to save Venom, forgive Sandman, and apologize for Harry in Spider-Man 3, not blow them up in a big explosion. Sorry, back to Doctor Strange. It's clear that they're using him just to set up his second movie, Multiverse of Madness, and possibly set up a live-action Spider-Verse. What I'm hoping for is that his role is the same as it was in Thor Ragnarok, where he's just there to spout some exposition and further prove that Peter is on his own. Before we talk about the Spider-Verse stuff, let's talk about one of the minor details that may have been leaked. MCU Miles Morales. Now, before 2018, I wasn't the biggest fan of Miles. I thought he was cool, but, I didn't really care as much. But after Marvel's Spider-Man and Into the Spider-Verse and Spider-Man Miles Morales delved deeper into him as a character, because I haven't been able to read comics, I don't have access to that where I live, I've enjoyed him ever since. Recent auditions show the possible arrival of Miles Morales into the MCU. Now, normally I'd be like, well, cool. I remember hearing Prowler talk about how he's got an FU in Homecoming, so he would exist. But some of the rumors aren't that great. Again, most of the stuff is rumors, but I just needed to vent about it. The rumor claims that this version of Miles is from the Raimiverse, or Tobey's universe. Now, whether or not Tony dies, which I really hope Tobey doesn't die, because it wouldn't make sense for him to bring him back just for that, but somehow he's going to be stuck in the main MCU Peter's universe and hilarity ensues. Now, having Peter and Miles exist at the same time is nothing new now in the MCU. That would be cool, but not now. This Peter is still in high school, and so would Miles. Heck, he'd probably be in late middle school. Now, that would be an interesting dynamic, but it takes away one of the most defining traits of Miles. He's always trying to live up to the legacy of Peter Parker and be his own hero. But by dumping him into a world where that Peter isn't even close to being the Spider-Man he knows, Miles loses a part of why his character is so interesting. All that there would be left is the fact that Miles has other powers, which Peter can pretty much copy because he has access to Stark tech at his beck and call, so he can make a suit that has a stealth mode and electric blast. He kinda had that for his red and black suit in Far From Home. The story of Miles Morales is one of him becoming his own hero while also living up to his mentor. And if you think about it, that's a lot like MCU Spider-Man. His parental figure is younger and more active. He's trying to please his mentor even after death, and we all know about the whole Ned Leeds and Genki Leeds thing. Not only that, Spider-Man's new suit has a Miles Morales feel to it. And once again, this version of Peter is nowhere close to being a mentor character himself. He's still trying to grow out of the mentorship role, while also making a new one that doesn't make sense. So, having two main characters who have the same basic powers and premise, with a few exceptions, is just confusing and a waste of time. Speaking of time, it's time to talk about the multiversal-sized elephant in the room. Let's talk about the possibility of this movie being a live-action Spider-Verse. Now, before anyone goes and says I'm a hater or a fake fan because I don't like your favorite version or this idea, I would love the idea of a live-action Spider-Verse movie. I want to see Tobey and Andrew given another chance. I want to see an emotional moment where Tobey takes off his mask and Peter and also maybe his Aunt May look at him with near tears in their eyes saying, "Uncle Ben?" implying that their world's version of Ben looked just like him, which could lead to a scene where Tom Spidey asks Tobey for advice on what to do. I saw a post where a similar thing happened with Andrew, where it's revealed that Peter's father, Richard Parker, is Andrew's doppelganger, which would make sense because Andrew's version has always wondered what happened to his dad. I want to see Andrew Garfield given a second chance to really shine as the amazing Spider-Man without studio interference, so that he can play this character the way he wanted to play it ever since he was 3. I want a swinging sequence with all 3 of these Spider-Men flying through the streets of Manhattan in their own little personal ways, with Tobey being far out and you see the buildings around him, Andrew with his up close and personal making you feel like you're really swinging with him, and Tom's little in-between. Maybe even swinging by Jonah Jameson as we see him nearly have a heart attack at the sight of 3 Spider-Men. But if I'm gonna be honest, I feel like it's too soon for this version of Spider-Man with the current situation he's been placed in, and his character just isn't ready for it yet. It's almost like everyone, including the writers, have forgotten that Mysterio has not only framed Spider-Man for his deeds in Far From Home, but also completely betraying him by revealing his secret identity to the world, placing a target on not only his, but the back of everyone Peter knows and loves. And a live-action Spider-Verse isn't something you throw onto that already perfect pizza that's ready to be put in the wood-burning oven at about 750 degrees Fahrenheit. You know what that does? It gives Peter a get-out-of-jail-free card. Because all he can do is just get one of the other guys to come in and say, "Oh hey, I'm the real Spider-Man." "What? No, I'm not Peter Parker. That guy's lame." And they just do a bunch of stuff like flip and web swing and all that stuff to prove it, and Nick Fury can come in and just say, "Yeah, Mysterio was a fraud," and boom, that emotional suspense we've been waiting for over 2 years will feel like nothing, because Peter got lucky. And it feels like it's only there so the audience gets excited to see the new movie on opening night to see what happens next. Wouldn't it be more compelling if Peter had to face the world and deal with these on his own? You know, like Spider-Man always does? In the 1994 cartoon episode Framed, Peter is put on trial for something he didn't do, and he has to be careful who he can trust and needs to avoid his loved ones to keep them safe. And in the spectacular Spider-Man episode Identity Crisis, where Peter's identity has been revealed to the public, he needs to be careful so that people aren't led on that it's actually true, and he doesn't endanger the people that he loves. Again, I would love for these 3 to team up and do cool stuff and save the world. And it's basically going to happen because of a leaked video saying, "Which one's your favorite Spider-Man? Doesn't matter, in the Marvel Multiverse anything could happen. Like 3 Spider-Man going on, saving the world." But with the situation this version of Peter Parker is in now, he's not ready for it yet. Like, think about it. Where's his supporting cast gonna fit in all this? Where's Ned Leeds, Peter's best friend, fit into this? Where does MJ, Peter's new girlfriend, fit into this? How about Flash? It was revealed that he has neglectful parents, so are we just gonna ignore that? Now, yes, again, these are rumors, even though it's pretty much confirmed at this point. With Jamie Foxx and Doctor Strange, it's pretty much a 2+2 situation. And you think out of all the people, I would be the first person to see it on opening night. But the truth is, I'm not hyped in the slightest. Why this matters. I know that after rambling for who knows how long, I need to wrap it all up together. It's plain and simple. It seems that Marvel Studios doesn't really think that their Spider-Man can carry a solo movie on his own. That's why in Homecoming he had Iron Man and Happy Hogan, and in Far From Home he had Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. He's never really had to fight his own battles by himself except for that one time in Homecoming. Other than that, he's really kind of had someone to hold his sticky hand. And now with Doctor Strange and 2 more experienced Spider-Men, the focus never really seems to be on this Peter Parker's growth into the Spider-Man we know and love. He tries to do what he wants, but he always has these older characters being like, no, do it how we tell you to do it. And that's not who Peter is. That's not who Spider-Man is. Spider-Man stories are dramas, not Disney Channel movies where everyone gets happily ever after at the end. My biggest fear isn't that this movie will suck. It's a Marvel movie. Those things don't flop anymore. Critics, casual moviegoers, and Tom Holland stans who think they know better than everyone else because they stalk his socials 24/7 will give this movie 5 stars and it'll make $1 billion at the box office. My biggest fear is that these movies won't get the right kind of love because they're not giving their Spider-Man the right kind of love. Let him grow, let him suffer, let him move on and stop trying to impress other heroes, let him learn from his mistakes. Let Ned be more than his quirky best friend. Let him be the guy in the chair helping Peter navigate like he did in Homecoming. Let MJ be more than just lonely girl with dark, edgy humor. Show us why she's like that. In a deleted scene in Homecoming, it was revealed that her parents didn't really care for him. What is that like? What is that like for her? Let this version of Aunt May worry and be hesitant about letting her son, her only family left, go out at night and May die the same way she lost her husband, and stop making her this, oh look at me, I'm hot now, I'm not an old lady. Let Flash be more than just a guy who says mean things to Peter only for Peter to just brush it off like it's nothing. Make Peter live with the consequences for his smaller actions like ditching his friends when they need him other than a, hey, don't do that again, even though he will. Develop these new characters you give us instead of giving us bland and forgetful ones that you could have just easily given to those who need it. Let your Spider-Man grow. Let these characters grow. Tom Holland is a fantastic actor. But what's the point of being a fantastic actor when you basically have to replay the same arc over and over again and you don't really change? Why would I go see a Spider-Man 3 but the newest one is overshadowed by the 2 more beloved and interesting takes on my favorite fictional character that I look up to for inspiration every day? How can I learn to love the new when you keep showing me the old and reminding me that I could be remembering and watching their stories instead of this one? This matters to me because Spider-Man matters to me. He matters to generations of kids ever since his first appearance in Amazing Fantasy number 15 all the way back in 1962. And if it wasn't for things like Marvel's Spider-Man or Into the Spider-Verse, kids today would only know Spider-Man as a child who can't grow up like Peter Pan, but is always asking for help from more interesting people. They'll only know him as the guy who doesn't face the repercussions of his actions as long as he's got a rich billionaire behind him. Let Tom Holland carry his own Spider-Man movie. Without Iron Man, without Nick Fury, without S.H.I.E.L.D., without Doctor Strange, without other versions of himself. Show the kids watching that they don't need other people to do the job for them and that they can get back up no matter how many times they get knocked down. Showing that they can do the responsible thing to do without having one of those other superheroes or people tell them that it is the right thing. Let this Spider-Man really remind us that with great power, there must also come great responsibility. The story of Spider-Man isn't about a boy with superpowers becoming a man. It's about a boy becoming a man because of his superpowers. You keep saying that this movie, Spider-Man will walk out of the shadow of the Avengers and be his own hero. Actions speak louder than words. And with all of these castings and rumors going around, looks like these are just words and not actions. You can do it. Just make it a grounded and honest Spider-Man movie first, in an MCU movie setting up the next 5 movies or this whole multiverse stage second. Evolve these characters you've established in your movies and don't add unnecessary new ones just for a pointless love triangle. Then when you're done with Peter clearing his name and giving it back his secret identity by himself, with maybe the help of his supporting cast that you've given us, then you can have this live-action Spider-Verse starring Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. Because if you rush a live-action Spider-Verse and the Sinister Six just to get it over with and say that you did it first and making a lot of money, you miss out on a really good potential Spider-Man story that could be told for years to come.